Today I want to talk about all the migraine medication that I've tried that didn't really work for me, which then ultimately led me to the decision to start the keto diet. I watched a documentary here on YouTube, and it was about a new preventative migraine medication called Qulipta or Qulipta, depending where you are in the world, and the active ingredients is an atogepant. And I never heard about preventative migraine medication before. I will link the documentary below. It was in German, but you'll be able to switch on auto dubbing or titles, hopefully. They showed a few people in this documentary, and some people showed all their medication and their shoe boxes full of medication they tried, and nothing helped them, and they described their migraines. And then they were talking about this medication, this new medication. And there was one guy who was taking it, and he said it helped him. So I was like, oh my God, I need to try this. So I spoke to my GP, and my GP said you need to try at least 3 different migraine medications before you can prescribe you this one. I don't know why. I live in Scotland, and it could be because it's new, it could be because it's expensive. I have no idea. If anybody knows why they do that, let me know. So then I said, yes, okay, I'm willing to try it. And I was very hopeful. So there was 1 medication I was already taking, and then 2 other medications that I was willing to try. And this is what I want to talk about. So I'll tell this story in chronological order, and then I get back to the atogepant at the end because it was the last medication I've tried. Hopefully this video will be interesting for a few people because atogepants are quite a new medication, and it's only been licensed for a couple of years. So I think a lot of people haven't even heard about it, and I only heard about it by coincidence. So the first medication I'm going to talk about is a medication you take once the migraine has started. The other 3 are preventative medications that you take every day. So the first one is quite a common one that people take. It's called Maxalt Melt. And I'm going to read some stuff now because there's a lot of information, and I'm going to be as quick and as clear as I can. Key information about Maxalt Melt. Active ingredient, risotriptan benzoate, which belongs to a class of medicines called triptans. Triptans is a class of medication specifically for migraines. How it works? It works by narrowing the blood vessels around the brain that become swollen during a migraine attack, thereby relieving the headache, pain, and associated symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, and sensitivity to light and sound. Formulation. It comes as a wafer that dissolves on the tongue, allowing it to be swallowed with saliva and without the need of water. This makes it a suitable option for individuals who experience nausea or difficulty swallowing during a migraine episode. Usage. It should be taken as soon as possible after the onset of a migraine headache. It is not a preventative medication and should not be used to stop a migraine attack from occurring. A lot of you are probably familiar with either this medication or other triptans. They are like very, very strong painkillers. And I just quickly want to talk about how I cope or react to them. So luckily, over the years, my pain is not as strong as it used to be in my head, my headaches. I get a lot of fatigue. I'm extremely dead in bed. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. I'm extremely dead in bed when I have a migraine, and I often get a headache. I often get a swollen eyeball, which I'm not going to go into, but if you have migraines, maybe you can relate. Luckily, my headaches are not as bad as they used to be during a migraine. I get a lot of other symptoms. My migraines are still a 10 out of 10 bad when I get them, but the pain is maybe a 6 or 7 or sometimes a 5, and I've only taken this maybe twice last year. So how it works, I'm lying in bed and I have the pain, and I try to distract myself and start counting to 1,000, and I often lose my thread, so I count to a certain number and then I start again. And I actively lie there and I want to feel the effect of the medication because it's actually quite nice. So you have the headache and it's not super instant. It maybe takes 10-15 minutes, but then I can physically feel the pain going away and me falling asleep. It's an amazing feeling. But unfortunately, I get a lot of side effects with this medication. So a normal person who has a migraine, you take this and then after a few hours or a good night's sleep, you're good to go and you get up. For me, I think the side effects are that I get fatigued anyway with my migraines. This makes me even more fatigued. It makes me nauseous. So I still end up 2 days in bed. So that's also another reason why I don't like taking this. But so I would only take this if my pain was really, really bad. Otherwise, I take nothing because there's nothing else that really helped me. The next medication I've tried now is my first preventative medication, and it's called Propranolol. Propranolol works by interfering with the body's stress response system, specifically by blocking the effects of the hormone adrenaline and noradrenaline throughout the body and in the brain. This is why it belongs to a class of drugs known as beta blockers or beta adrenergic blocking agents. Here's a breakdown of how it works in general and specifically for migraine prevention. General mechanism: blocking receptors. Propranolol binds and blocks beta adrenergic receptors on various cells in the body, primarily in the heart, blood vessels, and nervous system. Slowing the heart. By blocking adrenaline's effect on the heart's beta-1 receptors, propranolol causes the heart to beat more slowly and with less force. This reduces blood pressure and the heart's overall workload. Blood vessel effects. It also affects the beta-2 receptors in blood vessels and other smooth muscles, though its exact effect on blood flow is complex and varies by body part. Reducing physical anxiety symptoms. In the nervous system, it blocks the physical manifestations of anxiety, like trembling hands and racing hearts and sweating, which are triggered by adrenaline surges. Okay, pause. So this is basically a medication that calms your whole body and your whole system down, and it helps with anxiety. So it is not really made for migraines. How it works for migraine prevention. While the exact anti-migraine mechanism isn't fully understood, several factors contribute to its effectiveness as a preventative treatment. So I don't know if they even researched this. Vascular stabilization. Migraines are partly associated by changes in blood flow and blood vessel dilation in the brain. Propranolol may help stabilize the tone of these blood vessels, preventing the swelling and constriction cycle that contributes to the pain. So it calms down your muscles. Central nervous system effects. It is thought to influence the transmission of pain signals in the brain and spinal cord. It may increase the levels of serotonin, a neurotransmitter that plays a crucial role in regulating pain perception and mood. Neurotransmitter modulation. By modulating nerve activity and potentially reducing nerve excitability in the brain, it can decrease the frequency with which migraine triggers initiate a full-blown attack. In summary, propranolol works to calm down the physiological processes that contribute to migraines and anxiety symptoms, rather than providing immediate pain relief for an active headache. It requires consistent daily use to build up an effective level in the body. Sorry, by the way, I'm a really bad reader. The part about serotonin is quite interesting because it says it increases your serotonin, and people with anxiety and when you have a migraine, your serotonin drops. Let's move on to the next medication, and then I explain to you why nothing really worked, because the reason for all the medication is pretty much the same. Nortriptyline is a tricyclic antidepressant commonly used off-label for migraine prevention. It is generally considered an effective preventive treatment, especially for individuals with frequent attacks or co-occurring conditions like depression, anxiety, and chronic pain. Great. Nortriptyline is thought to help prevent migraines by balancing certain neurotransmitters in the brain, primarily serotonin and norepinephrine. This process changes how nerves receive pain signals, reducing the frequency and severity of migraine attacks rather than curing them completely. The anti-migraine effect occurs at a lower dose than what is used for depression and are independent of its antidepressant effects. Then finally, I was allowed to try the atogepant. That is the new medication I was talking about that I saw the documentary about. How atogepant works. Atogepant is a calcitonin gene-related peptide CGRP receptor antagonist mechanism. CGRP is a naturally occurring protein that plays a role in the pain signal pathways of the nervous system and is found at elevated levels during a migraine. Action. Atogepant works by blocking CGRP from binding to its receptors, which inhibits the function of CGRP and helps prevent migraine attacks from developing in the first place. Difference from older medications. Unlike older migraine medication like beta blockers, antidepressant, and anticonvulsants that were originally developed for other conditions, atogepant was specifically designed to target the CGRP pathways. So, CGRP receptors is something that goes into your brain and triggers a migraine, and atogepants block that. So, this medication sounds way more specific for migraines. I should probably mention at this point that I have no medical background, and you can probably tell by my pronunciation of some of these words. But I think it's just important as a migraine sufferer to understand your illness and to research it yourself and to understand when you're taking medication, to understand a little bit what you're taking. I think before starting the keto diet, it's worth trying these medications because maybe you're lucky and something works for you and you can just continue eating what you've always eaten. In my case, unfortunately, I always feel all the side effects. As I was describing with the Maxalt melt, that one is quite an extreme one. The other ones, I didn't even get very far with trying. I've only taken, each one I've taken maybe once or twice. The side effects I get is a lot of brain fog, and the only way I can describe it is that I don't feel myself. And I think especially if you take an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication, even if it's, for me, even if it was just a very low dose, it feels like it suppresses my soul or my personality. It's a very dulling feeling. I feel like I'm very dulled down, brain fog, also like tiredness, because as I mentioned before, I get a lot of fatigue anyway with my migraines. Now with keto, it's much better because before keto, I had random off days that weren't proper migraine days, but where I was just fatigued and feeling a bit weak. So I feel like this condition is in my body, and when I take a medication, it brings it out even more. So the feeling of not feeling like myself was too strong for me to continue, basically. And I think it's a bit of a weird exchange I've been doing, because on the keto diet, I feel 100% healthy and myself all the time, unless I have a migraine attack. But I'm obviously very restricted with what I can eat. On the other hand, with this migraine medication, you can probably eat whatever you want and more or less live your life, but there's a chance you don't feel like yourself. So I think it's a weighing up pros and cons, and it's up to an individual what is more important to you. And I really hope that there are people out there who can take any of these medications and that it'll help them and that they don't feel any side effects. If I could just pop a pill every day or twice a day and not feel any side effects and never have a migraine again, hell yeah. If you experience this, please comment below and let me know, because I know I can't do it, but I'd be really curious to hear if any medication helped anyone. Thanks for watching. I hope I haven't forgotten anything, and maybe I'll see you again.